Anyway, so I swiped a few times to release the energy of that emotion. And then I said, okay, how is it? And so he starts moving and bending and twisting, and he can't find the pain anymore. It's gone. He keeps looking for it, and it's not there anymore. And now remember, it was like a 9+ on a 0 to 10 scale. It was really severe. He couldn't believe it. It was like a miracle.
Welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. I'm your host, Lee Brandon. This work started for me several decades ago when I started to see the impact I could make on people, helping them to identify the root cause of their health problems that no doctor could figure out, including serious back, knee, shoulder and neck injuries, acne and eczema issues, severe gut health problems, even helping couples get pregnant after several IVF treatments had failed. And it really moves me to be able to help people in this way. And that is why I do what I do and why we have this show. In this week's episode, I had the great pleasure to speak to the founder and author of The Emotion Code, Dr. Bradley Nelson, about the Emotion Code and how he invented this form of energy medicine. I was particularly keen to share Dr. Brad's views on what trapped emotions are, what health conditions they can cause, and how the Emotion Code works. As you'll soon hear, Dr. Brad is a great speaker with great knowledge on the subject of energy medicine and has a great passion for helping people overcome trapped emotions and the pain and illness they can cause. Enjoy. Bradley Nelson, welcome to the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Lee. It's great to be here. I'm excited about our show here.
Yeah, it's really great to have you on. Been looking forward to this for some time, having gone through your training myself. So, you're already speaking to the converted, shall we say, in this interview.
Good. That's fine with me.
So, Brad, could you perhaps kick things off by sharing your history, maybe your professional background, and what led you to devise the Emotion Code?
Sure. Well, what happened was really a healing journey for me that began when I was 7 years old. I was really sick with the measles, and I'd overheard my parents talking. I knew the plan was I was going in the hospital the next day, and my folks came into the room. It was fairly late at night. Everyone else had gone to bed, and I'm lying there on the couch, feeling really sick and feverish and nauseated, and I'm laying there on the couch because my folks had made a bed for me so I could be near their bedroom. And my mother asked my father if he would pray for me. And so they knelt down by the side of the couch. They started praying for me, or my dad did anyway. And in the middle of this short, heartfelt prayer, this change began at the top of my head, and it went through my body to the soles of my feet, and I was instantly healed. And that was the beginning for me, because that's a crazy kind of experience to have, right? And it taught me that there's a higher power that we can draw upon. And it also taught me that healing doesn't necessarily have to take a long time. It can happen instantly. That did happen to me. So I filed those things away. And then about 7 years later, I ended up with kidney disease, for which there was no treatment. And it was very serious. But I was brought through that and healed of that in very short order, within just a few weeks, by some alternative doctors. So I decided that's what I wanted to do with my life, was be an alternative doctor, because Western medicine had nothing to offer me at that point. Right. And so anyway, that was kind of where that went. And then I discovered computers, and then that took me on a whole different path. That was in 1980. I was going to college. I took a class on basic computer programming. And that was the end for me. I was completely hook, line, and sinker into computers now. And I forgot all about my direction going into the healing arts. And it was a very powerful answer to prayer, actually, that happened in the winter of 1983-84 that brought me back to that original path of going into the healing arts. And so I did. I went to chiropractic school. And I had an experience there that was really interesting. I was sitting in class one day, a neurology class, and my instructor was talking about the brain, and he was kind of riffing about how the brain is a computer, and at the time I was helping to put myself through school by programming the admissions office computers at the school that I was attending. So I was still really into computers. And he's talking about the brain as a computer. And I can remember sitting there thinking, wow, the brain's a computer. I wonder if we'll ever have the technology to be able to hack into it or access the back end and actually ask questions about what's wrong with our patients. Because, wow, that would be such an unbelievably powerful way to help people, because the brain must know, what's going on. And I remember thinking, well, probably not in my lifetime. Maybe in 200 or 300 years, we'll have that technology. And I kind of forgot about it. Little did I know that I was going to spend the rest of my professional career writing books about precisely that. And so, when I was in practice, I gradually came to understand that the subconscious mind within each one of us is really a binary computer. And a binary computer is, think about this. I mean, we're all used to using computers, right? If you have a cell phone, smartphone, that's a computer. It has a screen, and it probably has, you can probably touch things, and it's sensitive to that. So it has a touch screen interface. I'm sitting here on my laptop. My laptop has a screen where I can see things, and it's got a keyboard where I can type in messages and so on. So it has that kind of interface. A computer with a binary interface isn't something that we're really used to. And so, so a binary computer like the subconscious mind is kind of interesting. The subconscious mind, the body, it has no screen to display messages for us like a computer. Instead, it communicates to us through symptoms. And so it communicates to us through physical symptoms like pain, infertility, asthma, digestive disorders, and so on, diseases, cancer, and so on. It communicates to us through mental, emotional issues like depression and anxiety and phobias and panic attacks and PTSD and eating disorders and so on. And so, so that's the difference. And so I gradually learned that I could communicate with this computer that was within each one of my patients. And I found that I didn't actually need to talk out loud, that it communicated in a different way. I could just think things and it would respond. And so this was an ability that I gradually was able to develop. And I realized as time went on that it was something that anybody could do. It's actually really, really simple. And I don't think it's really anything that I actually discovered, but in my own process, in my own practice, I kind of rediscovered it, I guess is what you would say, or discovered it for myself. And so, so as time went on, the patients that I saw became more and more difficult, or had manifested more and more difficult problems. But I found that as I would ask the subconscious mind of my patients what they really needed, I found that the number one biggest common denominator for everyone was emotional baggage. In other words, the trapped emotional energies that are left behind after some kind of an emotional event. And sometimes emotions come up for us and we don't want to go there. And so we bury those emotions. Sometimes we experience emotions and we decide to get really involved and we really enhance that emotion and it becomes too big for us to process. Either way, that emotional energy that was trying to manifest now is kind of suspended in the body. And a trapped emotion is a little ball of energy from about the size of a baseball to about the size of a softball. And these I found can inhabit the body and can manifest as all kinds of different problems, all the problems that I just mentioned. In fact, I found that every disease process that my patients had, and during the last 10 years of my practice, most of the patients that I saw had been told there was no help for them at all, no cure for them in Western medicine. And yet what I found was that those patients all had something in common. Besides the other kinds of imbalances that manifest as symptoms, the number one cause of symptoms, mental, emotional, and physical, is trapped emotions, is emotional baggage. And that's why in 2004, I left my practice and wrote the book, The Emotion Code, so that that information could get out to the world, because I knew it wasn't just for me. It had to get out there. So are you having fun with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. it's interesting. I don't want to go off too much of a sidetrack, but it's quite interesting that obviously you're a trained chiropractor and you've developed this form of energy medicine, for want of a better phrase.
Mhm.
Are you familiar with Dr. John Veltheim?
John Veltheim?
Yeah.
You know, off the top of my head, no, I don't think I've ever met him. I've heard the name.
Mm.
Um,
He's passed now, unfortunately, but he was a chiropractor from Australia.
mhm.
But he develops an energy medicine system as well. I just find that quite intriguing or interesting that you were both chiropractors and you both developed your own form of energy medicine, which I studied both. Just thought that was quite interesting. You both come from a chiropractic background, but yet developed an energy medicine system.
Well, he was probably like me. I mean, we graduated from chiropractic school, we go into practice, and now all of a sudden, it's like you have your own sort of laboratory. You've got people coming into you all the time with all kinds of problems. You're doing your best to try to figure out what the problems are and solve those problems. You keep what works, you discard what doesn't work, and gradually you refine things. And it's interesting because in my own practice, because really it was an answer to prayer that had gotten me into chiropractic. I developed a habit of prayer. Everybody that I saw, and by the way, nobody ever knew this. No one ever knew that I was actually saying a prayer for them. It was a totally private, totally personal habit that I had. But before I would work on somebody, I would just take a moment and I would ask God to help me with that person. And I'll tell you something, Lee, there were times when, rare occasions, when somebody would come in to see me and I didn't know how to approach their problem, didn't know what to do. And in response to that short, silent prayer for help, information would just flood in, and understanding would just flood into me from above, which is an incredible thing. Didn't happen very often, but it did happen. And so that was a powerful thing for me that really helped me to understand that, the higher power really is there for us and really is real, no matter what we think or no matter however we might refer to that higher power as God or source energy or the universe or whatever. I think we're all referring to the same thing, really. And so that was kind of a secret weapon, honestly, for me. And I think that I've taught people all over the world, and we've certified I think close to 13,000 practitioners now all over the world. And what I try to consistently tell them is, the highest duty of the healer is to act as a go-between for the higher power. And that's why you want to ask for help. Whatever your belief system is, it's fine. But if you don't ask for help, then you're kind of on your own and you're more limited in what you can do. But if you're humble enough to ask for help, then I believe it opens up that conduit. And then the angels come in and are able to whisper things to you and help you to help that person that they care about. I mean, people have actually seen that happen with the angels. So it's really interesting stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I first heard someone say exactly the same thing, that they're with a patient. They didn't know what to do. They literally just asked higher power to help them and it just flowed through them. And that was Paul Chek. I don't know if you know Paul Chek, but that was about 20 years ago that I first heard someone say that, and it was him. And he's done some pretty amazing things in his lifetime using exactly the same kind of approach, if you like.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's interesting because I happen to be a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which was formerly known as the Mormon Church. And in the UK, of course, a lot of people in the early days, in the 1800s and some 1850s, migrated to the U.S. and then, wagon trained it out to Salt Lake. But the current president of the church is 99 years old. His name is Russell M. Nelson. No connection. But it's interesting because he gave a talk one time. He was one of the top heart surgeons in the world. And he talked one day about how he was doing surgery on this guy and his heart was open and he didn't know what to do because the damage in the heart was such that he had no idea how to repair it. And so he said the silent prayer, and then it appeared in his mind exactly how to do this and how to suture this and what kind of sutures to use. And that procedure is still in use today. and it came, and he was able to actually see it like in 3D. Nikola Tesla would see things like that. His inventions would come to him in through his subconscious mind, and he would see them and manipulate them to the point that when that invention was built, he knew it was going to work. He didn't have to go through iterations of it because he'd already done it in his mind. So the mind is so incredibly powerful. It's just, it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Bruce Lipton wrote in, I think it's Biology of Belief, that, the subconscious mind is about 1 million times more powerful than the conscious mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally believe that. In fact, my own belief is that it's even beyond that. That we use 0.000000001% of our total intelligence consciously. And so the vast, vast bulk of our intelligence is subconscious. And the conscious mind is kind of, along for the ride.
Yeah, I completely agree. Could you perhaps explain what the human energy field is, and also what energy medicine is, for someone that might be wondering, what we're talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you think about it, really starting with Albert Einstein and his contemporaries like Niels Bohr and so on, they were trying to get to the very, very smallest things, the smallest elements of the atom, and what makes up the atom, and so on, and what are the behaviors of those we refer to them as subatomic particles, right, that make up the atom. And I really don't like the word particles because it makes these things sound like they have some kind of mass and substance and that they're little things, but really it's all just energy. In fact, Einstein himself said there is really no matter as such. Matter is just energy. And so if you think about these physical bodies that we're in, we think of these as being made of matter, but really matter is energy. And energy is matter. And so our bodies are made of energy. And for example, if you think about your hand, if you were to magnify your hand under a microscope and continue to magnify that hand and zoom in at greater and greater powers of magnification, eventually you'd be looking at a single cell. And if you were to continue to magnify that cell, you'd be looking inside the cell at the organelles that make up the cell. And eventually, if you continue to zoom in, about 850,000 times magnification, you might be looking at a strand of DNA. And if you were to pick out a little area of that DNA molecule, and if you were to zoom in more and more and more, sometimes at 1 million power magnification or more, you would be face to face with a single individual atom. And if you were to look inside the atom, you see there's really nothing in there. And you'd notice that there are some little energies that are zipping around at the speed of light. And, that's what we are. You'd notice the next atom is a long distance away. And so the reality of it is, Einstein and his contemporaries, they understood what our bodies really are. In fact, Einstein himself said the medicine of the future will be the medicine of frequencies. Now, he said that, but, we don't really understand it, or we haven't understood it for a long, long time. We've been stuck in Western medicine with pharmaceutical drugs that are generally designed to suppress symptoms, right? And surgery. And that's where medicine has been for a long time. But Einstein said that the medicine of the future will be the medicine of frequencies. Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And so energy medicine, lots of doctors and other smart people have been saying for a long time that that energy medicine is the energy or is the medicine of the future. But finally now we're arriving at this place where we're beginning to see what that actually looks like. And it doesn't look anything like Western medicine. It's totally different. And so, for example, with the emotion code, what we do is, as you know very well, we teach methods of tapping into the subconscious mind, asking questions, and getting answers from the binary computer. The nature of this internal computer is that it's binary, which means it can answer any question you want as long as the answer is yes or no. And what's fascinating is animals have a subconscious mind as well. And our practitioners get great results. And of course, to become certified, you had to work on some animals. And they have a subconscious mind as well. And so you can ask questions of their subconscious mind and get solid answers and find out what's going on with them. And so, so energy medicine is really just viewing the body finally for what it truly is, for what the scientists and the quantum physicists have been telling us now for over 100 years, that our bodies, even though they seem so solid to us and they have weight and they have mass and so on, yet the reality, which is kind of hard to wrap our heads around, is that these bodies are actually energy, nothing but pure energy. In fact, there's a few years ago, I think to make a point, some quantum physicists said that if you could remove all the empty space from everyone's body on Earth, all the space in between all the atoms, you could actually fit all 7.8 billion people in the world into a box the size of a sugar cube. Well, I mean, that doesn't make any sense to us, but it does make sense to them because they understand what our true nature is. And so the emotion code is just a way to find these other kinds of energies that have become stuck in the body, emotional energies that cause a lot of damage and are an underlying cause of every disease process and all the things that I mentioned before. So during the years that I was in practice, I was also finding other kinds of imbalances that were causing people's symptoms. It wasn't just emotional, but that was the single biggest common denominator. But as time went on, I found other kinds of imbalances as well. Things like pathogens that can get in the body, parasites and viruses and other kinds of infections, which we're all familiar with. Trauma energies that can get into the body from some kind of a physical blow that a person takes that can then perpetuate those symptoms for the rest of your life in some cases. Things like nutritional deficiencies and things like imbalances in the organs and the glands and the meridians and the chakras. And the beauty of it is the subconscious mind knows exactly what's going on at any given moment with that individual. And so we now have the key. And the reason why we call the emotion code, and the body code, and the belief code is because what we're doing is we've cracked the code in a sense on this internal computer. And now we know how to talk to it and get information out of it. So.
Awesome. Amir was a 42-year-old professional man suffering from acne. He was overweight, suffering from low confidence, and he had very low energy levels when he first came to see me. He was also spending £400 per month on products to cover up his acne. His skin was very oily, his face and scalp were covered in acne, and he worried that it might start to affect his work. Amir was a sugar lover, and it took him some time to wean himself off of sugar. But slowly over time, Amir made the necessary changes. Upon testing his gut microbiome, it was discovered that he did have a minor imbalance of gut microbes, including Staphylococcus aureus, which is often linked to skin conditions. He had hormonal imbalances, which would have affected his energy levels, and a number of food sensitivities that may have been causing his acne. Amir was also given supplementation to help rebalance his gut microbiome and his hormones. And within a few weeks, his skin improved to the point where he had clear skin for the first time in 30 years. If you would like to achieve the same kind of result as Amir, you can now follow a comprehensive step-by-step guide in my brand new book, Eliminating Adult Acne for Good, available now from all major online bookstores and via my website at www.bodycheck.co.uk/books. So, you mentioned briefly before about trapped emotions themselves.
Mhm.
Could you explain, perhaps in a bit more detail, how they happen? I know you did mention it briefly before, how they happen, but also some specific ways in which they can affect the body and what kind of health challenges they can create.
Yes, absolutely. Well, um, so trapped emotions, if you think about it, what a trapped emotion does, it's a ball of energy, right? And what that trapped emotion is going to do is it's going to interfere with a person's ability uh, to function well. So, in other words, let me give you an example. Okay, it's probably the easiest way to do it. Um, if you think about physical pain, I had a guy that came into me many years ago, and he was really in pain. His pain was, between a 9 and a 10 somewhere with his low back. It was absolutely killing him. And so I started doing some testing using the emotion code, asking his subconscious mind, is there a trapped emotion that's connected to this? And the answer was yes. Now we use a chart of emotions that looks like this. Okay. And there are 60 emotions in the chart. It's divided up into 2 columns and 6 rows. And very quickly, I figured out by just asking questions and getting answers. I was muscle testing him. So he's holding his arm out parallel to the floor. I'm asking yes and no questions, and I'm getting strong for yes and weak for no from his body. And that's the binary nature, right, of the subconscious. And it turned out that the emotion was in column A, row 4, right there. And the emotion was anger. And so I asked if we needed to know anything more about this, and the answer was yes. And so I figured out through testing, did this occur in the last 10 years? No, 20 years. Turned out it was about 20 years before. And he immediately piped up and said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "I know exactly what that's about." And I said, "Really?" And he said that he was falsely accused of something at this place where he was working, and he was really angry, really, really upset, and very hurt by it. And that emotion that he felt, remember, was an energy and a frequency and a vibration. That energy became trapped in his body, and specifically trapped in the area of his low back. He was actually accused, as I recall, of cooking the books. And the low back is often related, metaphysically to money issues. Yeah. So anyway, that's where that emotion lodged. So what a trapped emotion does is it exerts this kind of a distorting force on the area where it is. And so the energy field of the body is being distorted to a degree by these trapped emotions. And so if you think about this guy's low back, all the chemical reactions taking place in his low back within the area of this little sphere of energy were being interfered with to some degree. And the lymph flow was affected to some degree, the blood flow to some degree. The flow of acupuncture meridian energy through that area, may have been totally blocked. And so anyway, that's what it was about. So I swiped a few times down his back. And that's one of the ways we release these trapped emotions. You can just take a magnet, like any kind of magnet, and we just go down the back, or you can just use your hand as well. We use the governing meridian, which begins at the tailbone. It goes up over the top of the head to the inside of the upper lip. So if you're working on yourself, you can just do it like this. If you're working on somebody else, you can do it that way, or down the back, or whatever. Any length of the governing meridian we find will do. Anyway, so I swiped a few times to release the energy of that emotion. And then I said, "Okay, how is it?" And so he starts moving and bending and twisting, and he can't find the pain anymore. It's gone. He keeps looking for it, and it's not there anymore. And now remember, it was like a 9+ on a 0 to 10 scale. It was really severe. He couldn't believe it. It was like a miracle. He kept exclaiming, and I was excited that it worked so well. Well, a couple days later, this guy comes back in. And he said to me, "Dr. Nelson," he said, my back still doesn't hurt. He said, "I still can't believe it. It's just kind of miraculous." But he said, "When I came in here, I had another problem going on that I didn't tell you about." He said, "For as long as I can remember, I've basically been what you'd call a rageaholic." And he said, "I've got to watch the road rage, and I have to, I've been to anger management classes a few times, and hasn't really helped me." He said, "I'm always yelling at my wife and my kids." He said, "I'm just not a happy person." And he said, he said, "Since you released that anger from me, he said, I feel completely different. He said, things that used to set me off don't set me off anymore. He said, I just feel kind of relaxed and kind of peaceful. He said, how does that work? And at the time, I didn't know. And I said, I don't know, but here's what we believe. Okay. Think about this guy. He's got this trapped emotion, this ball of anger in his low back that's distorting the energy field in that area and thereby distorting the physical body itself. When we release that, suddenly those tissues can breathe. The blood starts flowing better. The lymph starts flowing better. The chemical reactions are no longer being impinged or interfered with. And the acupuncture energy starts to flow again, right? Better. And so the result is the physical pain goes away. But how do you explain the other part of it? Well, think of it this way. All emotions are energy. Every emotion on this list has its own very unique frequency, right? And it just so happened that this emotion was an emotion of anger. So what would happen and what was going on with him over all those years, 2 decades, when a situation would come along in his life where he might tend to feel the emotion of anger, he would feel that emotion much more easily, much more readily, because part of his body was literally feeling that vibration 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that's the crazy thing about this, right? That we all have emotional baggage. We all have trapped emotions. And what's it doing to us? Think about that guy. He was a rageaholic until we cleared that anger from 20 years before. What's going on? What's going on in your own life? I mean, did you used to cry yourself to sleep at night? Have you been through a divorce? Have you, were you bullied as a child? I mean, have you lost a loved one? I mean, we all go through emotional lows. The emotional highs don't seem to affect us as much, but the emotional lows, those are the ones that I think are more dangerous because they tend to result in the creation of trapped emotions more readily. And so that's what the emotion code really is all about. And the beauty of it is it's a really simple method, as you know, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's what, one of the things I love about it is the fact that it's so simple. I mean, as I said, I studied the body talk system with Dr. John Veltheim.
Yes.
Almost
20. Dr. John Veltheim. Yes, of course. Body talk. Sorry.
Yeah. So that was almost 20 years ago. And I loved it. But the reason I stopped doing it, because I work with multiple disciplines, to really do it justice, I had to be doing it, I felt, pretty much full time, because you have to learn the protocol. Right. So that you can completely focus on your right brain. So you're not having to think with the left brain. And I never got to that point where I thought, yeah, I completely got this whole protocol in my head, but it was so complex. Whereas with the emotion code, it's so simple. I don't need to go through that process of, memorizing a massive protocol. It's so simple, and B, I don't have to memorize it.
Yeah, you don't have to memorize it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have any of it memorized. I have one cell here memorized. It's B6, pride, shame, shock, unworthy, worthless. The other ones, don't ask me. I don't, even though I've used it for years, I don't have it memorized. You don't need to.
Awesome. So you say that emotional trauma is the root cause of most of the discomfort and illness in the world today. How did you come to that conclusion?
Well, I came to that conclusion because of my own practice. For almost 20 years, just seeing people day in and day out, and having the ability to ask the subconscious mind or the internal computer of the patient what's going on. What I found was 90% of the physical pain that people had was being caused by trapped emotions. And I found that if I released those trapped emotions, the physical pain would go away. Now, there were other things as well, and I alluded to those a little bit ago. But trapped emotions, if you think about it this way, okay, the oldest idea in the history of healing is that health is either maintained or regained by either maintaining or by regaining the state of balance in the body. That's a very ancient idea. Well, what I found was that there were imbalances that were causing problems for people. And in the body code book, okay, we talk about those imbalances. And so to give you an idea here, what I found during those years is that there are really 6 different kinds of imbalances that cause our trouble. There are things like energies. Things in that category would be things like physical traumas, like where you receive some kind of a physical blow, maybe the energy's still in the body, trapped emotions are in here, and other things. There are pathogens, viruses, bacteria, fungal infections, mold, and so on. There are imbalances of the circuitry and the systems of the body. So, for example, meridians that are out of balance and chakras that are out of balance, organs and glands that are imbalanced in some way, short-circuited in some way. Over here, we have misalignments. I found that that's another category. Any kind of tissue can misalign, and misalignments are energetic really in nature, like everything else. And then down here, we have nutrition and lifestyle. And so you might have a deficiency of a certain thing. Why are you taking that thing? Because of its energy and frequency and vibration, right? Back to Tesla. You're deficient in a certain energy, frequency, vibration. That's why you take that vitamin, okay? It's all energy and frequency and vibration. Maybe you need a certain essential oil for its frequency, right? Or maybe there's something else going on. Over here, we have toxins. Maybe you've got some frequencies and energies in your body that shouldn't be there. Maybe you had mercury fillings when you were a kid, or maybe you've received some kind of a vaccine, or maybe some kind of medication that's in your body still. And then here we have this last category is what we call circuits and systems. And these are imbalances of organs and glands and chakras and systems and things like that. Maybe I already talked about that one. Anyway, so there are these 6 different categories. And what I found when I was in practice is, you see, as a former computer programmer, I always had a computer there with me as I was practicing on my patients. And as I would find new things or be led to new things, I would try to figure out where they fit into this hierarchy that gradually developed into these 6 different kinds of imbalances that cause all of our problems, really, mental, emotional, and physical. And so that's kind of how that went. Well, about a year after the Emotion Code book came out, so this would have been in 2008, one morning I woke up and my mind was full of instruction. And the instruction, this is very unusual, right? Very strange. But I woke up and I was specifically told, you need to take everything that you've learned about natural healing and put it into a self-study course that anyone can learn and make it available to everyone everywhere. And that is exactly what these 2 books really are. These are the manuals for these methods of healing, the Emotion Code and the Body Code. And, and of course, as you know, we have an app that you can use. But you can buy these books, and these books will teach you how the whole methodology works. And the Body Code itself, of course, is an app that runs on, mobile devices and desktops and so on. And we couldn't put the whole entire Body Code. I mean, there's more in there than what we could put into the book. I had a limitation on how many pages I could put into the book. To put the whole entire Body Code in here might be, might have been a book like the LA phone book, and nobody wanted that. And the publisher said, no, you can't do that. So what we did is we kind of took the highlights and put the highlights in here. And so you can use this book to actually help yourself and your loved ones. And so if you notice, if you go into this book, we teach you how to use the map. And there are page references. You probably can't see them, but there are page references in each one of these, underneath each one of these pictures. And so you actually ask questions and you muscle test to see where you need to go. And then, you're taken to a certain page, for example. And then on that page, it'll tell you where to go next and what to do next. And so people are using the book alone and having success working on their family members and themselves and loved ones. And that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted them to be able to use it. And then, the whole body of work is available online in the app, but there's enough in these 2 books to be able to do a lot of great healing work for you and your family and your loved ones.
Yeah, I mean, I've read the whole of the emotion code, obviously, and I've read some of the body code. But with regards to the emotion code, it's one of those things where anyone could pick it up and benefit from the emotion code. You don't necessarily need to find a practitioner, even though I am one, but you could literally do it yourself. So for someone that's maybe on a budget, the book is absolutely perfect.
Yeah, and that's exactly how we wanted it to be. We actually it was a matter of prayer, really. My wife would help me occasionally, but it was always a matter of prayer that we were asking the higher power, God, source energy, to help us to create this book and have it be simple enough that anyone could use it. Because it's easy to get lost in complexity, and the ego, I think, wants complexity. When I started out in practice, there were a couple of many years ago, there were a couple of healing techniques, energy healing methods that came along that were really interesting and had a lot of promise. And I saw those kind of devolve into these really complex methodologies that I had to discard. And honestly, just between us, I think that's a sign of the ego getting involved. When the ego gets involved, it wants to make things complex because it's like it wants to say, look how complex this is. You have to be a rocket scientist like me to be able to do this. That's how intelligent I am. Hooray for me. But the reality of it is, it doesn't have to be complex. Healing can be really, really simple. In fact, let me share a story with you. One of my favorite stories. We were at an event, and a woman was telling us. She told us the story. She said that she had gotten the emotion code book, and she started reading it, and she got the book on audio as well. And so, as she was reading it and listening to it, her son was reading it and listening to it along with her, and he got it, and he started practicing with his friends, muscle testing, and she thought it was really cute. Well, a couple of weeks go by. One day the phone rings, and this woman that's calling identifies herself as the mother of one of her son's friends. And she said, I need to talk to you. She said, my son has a severe phobia of water, and we've tried everything to fix it. Nothing's ever worked. You can get a phobia to anything. And she said it's been very disruptive to our life as a family and to his life. And we've tried everything and taken him to everybody. Nothing's ever fixed this. She said, right now I'm at the community pool. She said, my son is out playing in the water with the other boys for the first time in his whole entire life. She said, your son did this. She said, how is this even possible? What in the world is he doing? And those boys are only 11, right? So that's how simple it can be. It's not complicated. Kids can learn it, and kids are learning it and having great success all over the world. And that's one of my favorite things about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Simplicity is very important. I mean, in my own work, whilst, I've been studying for, 28 years or so, well, probably longer than that, probably 30 years. And over the time, you learn a lot of things that are very complex. They are very complex, but when I'm working with a client, my job is to make it simple so they can understand it and apply it.
Yeah.
Because if I'm trying to teach someone all the training I've done, well, it's going to take me 30 years to teach them.
Yeah.
But they want
exactly.
they want to know what they got to do today, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Something, there's a term in mathematics called elegance. And the most elegant solution is a mathematical formula that can't be made any simpler than it is, right? And Albert Einstein, I think, had a great sense of humor. He said one day, things should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler.
Yeah.
And this work that, the emotion code, the body code, and the belief code too, they're all as simple, I think, as they can possibly be, which makes them also rapid. They're fast. And another nice thing about the emotion code is that you don't have to You don't have to dredge up all those old feelings. You don't have to re-experience and re-traumatize yourself about the rape or, the death in the family or whatever it was. That's something that, you don't have to do, which is really nice too.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'd just like to quickly interrupt this episode to share with you some feedback I received from a client following an emotion code session. This feedback was from Emmy in California, and she said, "I just want to thank you. What you did last week, I was a little shocked that all of my pain had left my body. I couldn't believe it. I've had this pain for over 8 years, and for it to go away just like that, it was an amazing experience. It also helped me look within myself and let go of a few things I was holding on to. If you would like to see what the emotion code can do for you, why not experience a session with me? And you can arrange a session with me regardless of where you are in the world. And I'd like to offer a 50% discount off the first session for all Radical Health Rebel listeners. If you go to bit.ly/emotion code session to schedule your session with me at a time to suit you, and use the code emotion50 to claim 50% off your first session. And you never know, you might experience a great outcome just like Emmy. Now, back to the podcast. Something that I'm quite interested in as well is inherited trapped emotions. Can you explain how they work and what the effects are when they're released?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Inherited trapped emotions, what we have found is that at the moment of conception, I think all of us receive some emotional energy from mom or from dad or from both. And in many cases, they might have received that emotional energy when they were conceived from their mom or their dad or both. And so sometimes these can go back for hundreds of years. And so what happens to us is that we're now in the mortal life that we're living, we're manifesting the results not only of our own emotional baggage from the things we've been through, but also sometimes we're exhibiting behaviors and blockages in our lives because of what they went through. And so it's really an interesting thing. We have seen that oftentimes people are blocked in some way in life and they don't know why. Sometimes people will get rid of all the emotional baggage, or they'll do all kinds of study. They'll do everything that they can and still be stuck. And what we're finding is, for example, a person might be stuck about love and relationships because, of some trapped emotion of grief from the 1500s or something. And we don't know what went on, but, maybe that grandmother was jilted at the altar or something, or maybe her husband was killed in front of her, or something like that. And, we all have ancestors, and at some point they all went through really difficult, tragic things. And so those energies get passed down and then they manifest in us. It's a fascinating thing and very powerful. Scientists are finding out that this is true, that animals, in animal studies, they will pass these memories down, and they don't know how. The first study about this that was done was, I think it was about 15 years ago in Atlanta. They were studying mice and inheritance. And what they would do is they had mice in a cage, and they would blow in the smell of cherry blossom scent. And when they would have that scent go into the cage at the same time that the mice are smelling that scent, they would give the mice a little bit of an electrical shock. And pretty soon the mice became very aware that if they smelled that smell, they were going to get a shock, which they didn't like. And they found that these mice would then pass down that fear of cherry blossom scent, and they would pass it down for many generations. And one of the things that really was kind of mind blowing was that they took sperm from mice that had been sensitized, that had been shocked and smelled the cherry blossom scent. They took sperm from those mice to the other side of the campus and impregnated female mice that had never smelled cherry blossom and that had never been shocked. Their offspring were sensitized to cherry blossom, and if they smell cherry blossom, they'd have a fear reaction. And so it takes sometimes 14 generations or so in animals for this kind of thing to finally fade and go away. But most of the time, we see inherited trapped emotions that go back a few generations, but it's not unusual also for them to go back for 10, 20 generations, sometimes more. And so those are emotional energies that consciously we have no cognition, we have no awareness of. Yet, the subconscious mind, which is vastly intelligent, however intelligent it is, it's vastly more intelligent than the subconscious mind, and it knows all about those things. And so it's easy to find and release those, and then move on with your life. And the interesting thing about it is, it also, from the testing that we do, it also seems to release from those ancestors as well. And my belief system is that when we die, we die physically, but the spirit that is who we are, that continues to live. In fact, Lee, I'll tell you something. I teach seminars all over the world. Everywhere I go, when I do a seminar, I always ask the audience at a certain point when we're talking about this, if anyone in the audience has had the experience of dying temporarily and then actually looking down and seeing their body. And every seminar that I teach, there is a percentage of people who have had that experience. And so, it's really fascinating, but I believe that there are divine reasons why we're here right now in this world having this experience that we're having, and it's all for our good, right?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense to me that, energy, let's call it energy, is passed down via conception, because when you have offspring, you want them to be able to survive the environment that they're living in.
Exactly.
Right. So if a danger sign is cherry blossom, the aroma of cherry blossom, you want your ancestors to be aware of that, right? Because that could potentially save their life.
Well, yes, exactly right. And that's what this emotional baggage is I think intended for. It's a protective mechanism for the posterity. But the problem is it also can become a limiting factor, in how your own life works out. And so it's a beautiful thing to be able to get rid of this stuff.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things that some people might find hard to understand or even believe is how you can positively affect someone's health without being in the same room or even in the same country.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What would you say to someone that perhaps doesn't understand or maybe doesn't believe that you can affect someone's health when you're not even with them?
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting. There's a story actually that comes to mind in the Bible where the centurion comes to Jesus, and his servant is really sick. I think it was his servant, and he asks Jesus to work on his servant, and Jesus actually is able to heal that servant remotely. He says, "You have great faith. Your servant's healed. Go home and you'll find everything well." And so, it's all really about quantum physics. And so these are principles that are very, very foreign to most of us. But in quantum physics, we find that you can ask any quantum physicist, they'll tell you we're absolutely all connected. So imagine sitting on a beach and you're looking out at the ocean and you see some islands. Well, they look separate, don't they? But if you were to drain the water out of the ocean, you'd see that, those are all part of the same landmass. In fact, all the islands all over the whole world, in a sense, they're all connected. And so there are some really interesting principles in quantum physics. One of those is called entanglement, where we now know that energies, or we'll say particles, can become entangled or connected with one another at distances at least as great as the diameter of the Earth. And so when those particles become entangled, then they are essentially locked together, at least temporarily. And so, it's an interesting thing, Lee. When I was in practice, I never learned how to do this from anyone. It was something that just I kind of intuitively knew, or somehow knew it before I came here and remembered somehow. But the only time I used it when I was actually in my brick and mortar practice was when a patient of mine would go on vacation or something, and they'd go on a trip and they'd end up sometimes having trouble, and they would call me and they'd say, "Oh, my back or my knee or whatever is killing me. Can you help me?" And I was always able to tune in remotely and establish what we call a proxy connection with them, which is what we explain, both in the emotion code and in the body code, because it's something that you can actually do. It's very simple. And so I learned early on how powerful it was, and that people didn't actually have to be there live and in person. I remember, to give you an idea how powerful it can be. One day, I think it was in 2008, the year after the Emotion Code book came out, I was doing a radio show, and I've done somewhere around probably 1,600 or so radio shows over all these years. And I'm doing this radio show, and this woman calls in. Her name is Barbara, and she has acid reflux. And so I tested her and found that she had what we call a hiatal hernia, which is where the stomach protrudes up a little bit into the chest cavity. So the sphincter at the top of the stomach doesn't work right. And so she said that this has been going on for years, and it's really been bothering her. It's gradually been getting worse. It's just miserable, right? It's a miserable thing to have that reflux constantly. It's horrible. People have to live with that. But you don't have to live with it, because actually it's fixable. So what I did with her, now think about this, okay? I'm out west in the U.S. She's in Ohio, and so in the middle of the country, so hundreds and hundreds of miles apart. And so I tuned into her remotely, like we teach in the Emotion Code, and started asking some questions. Now, one of the things that you can do is we teach you how to get answers on your own body. Strong answers for yes, weak answers for no, even from the subconscious mind of another person, right? And so I'm tuned into her and I'm asking questions. And what I find is that, hey, she's got a trapped emotion that's part of the reason for this issue. So using the chart, I find a trapped emotion on there. I don't remember what the emotion was. Actually, I think it was frustration. Anyway, from age 35, right? And she's like 53 at the time. And she immediately said, "Oh yeah, I know what that is." Sometimes people remember, sometimes they don't, as you know. But she remembered what it was, something specific. And so I released it. And when you're working on somebody remotely, basically your subconscious mind has the ability to set aside its own needs to act on behalf of someone else. And so in other words, your energies and theirs can become entangled through that principle of quantum physics. And then you can actually ask questions and get answers very easily. And so to release that, I just swiped a few times with a magnet or my hand over the top of my head like so to release it. And she said it felt a little bit better. And so then, that was fine. I finished the interview with Dr. It was Dr. Richard DeCenso's program, actually. I finished the interview with him. And then the next day, she sends me this email. And in the email, she explains that next day, she didn't tell me on the interview, but she had an appointment to have surgery on this hiatal hernia. I had an aunt many years ago who died from this surgery during the surgery. It's kind of major. They have to open you up. They have to pull the stomach down and then staple it to the ribs and so on. And it's really nasty. She was going to have that surgery because she was just fed up with having this reflux. Anyway, she goes to the hospital and they give her barium to swallow, right? Because they're going to do what they call a scout X-ray, a scout film to see where everything is. and the barium helps to really show things. So she takes that, they do the films, and after studying the films for a while, the doctor comes out and he said, I don't really know how to explain this, he said, but it's not there anymore. And there's no fissuring or pitting or anything. It looks perfectly textbook normal. So we're canceling the surgery. And so she sends me this in an email. And it's got like 150 exclamation points in it. She's super excited. And she's never had any trouble since then. And we're still in touch through her husband. So, but that's the reality of it is, you see, we're living now in the 21st century, and our minds are beginning to expand, and our consciousness is beginning to expand, and we're starting to understand who we are, that we're divine beings, and that there are divine reasons for each one of us to be here. This is not a mistake. It's not happenstance. And so these new healing methods that are coming into the world are important, because it's time for us to realize that we ourselves are capable of things that we never could have imagined before. And I've told people before many times that when you're using the emotion code or the body code on somebody that you care about, they're on the other side of the planet, and from what you do, all of a sudden, their pain level goes from a 9 to a 0, for example, or all of a sudden, their depression is gone or whatever, because of your efforts, and you're on the other side of the world. I mean, when that happens to you, in that moment, your life will change forever, because you'll realize, wow, didn't know I could do that.
Yeah. Thanks for answering that question, because that's the most common question I've had since I've been doing the emotion code. And there's one funny story. There's a local health food store. I go in there quite regularly, so they all know me in there. And I normally have a quick chat with the staff, and they kind of know what I do for a living. And they say, oh, what are you up to? And I said, oh, I'm studying the emotion code. I said, but I need to find some animals to do some sessions on. And the owner said, well, what about Milo? And I said, okay, what does he, what's wrong with him? And she said, oh, he's just very needy. I said, okay. I said, I'll tell you what, I won't do it now. I'll go home and I'll do it. And she kind of looked at me a bit strange. And I said, oh, by the way, after I do it, he might get a bit drowsy, right? Which is what you teach on the course.
Right.
Animals can get drowsy after a session. So I went home and I did the session straight away. And about 30 minutes later, she sent me a text message, a picture of the dog asleep on the stairs. And she said, how did you do that?
Awesome.
So
my gosh.
I'll send her your answer, because then that's answered it far better than I would have done.
Yeah, it's really amazing, but that's the age that we're living in, the 21st century. And as I see it, the earth is really in labor, struggling to bring forth a whole new world of unbelievable consciousness and love, unconditional love, and that's where we're going, and we're going to get there. It's going to be a little rough, I think, getting there, because these power structures that have held control over mankind for so many generations they don't want to go away easy. Yeah. But we know how the story ends. So
yeah, well, they've played their hand now, haven't they? They're not hiding anymore. So
yeah, exactly.
So just on that quick topic of animals, can you talk a little bit about how the emotion code can be used to help animals?
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, animals have emotions, don't they? And anyone who lives with animals knows that they do. And animals develop emotional baggage. They develop trapped emotions. Sometimes they go through things that are difficult for them to process. So those emotional energies can become trapped in their bodies. And it was kind of it was something that was a surprise, honestly, to me. My wife and I were called one day to work on a horse that had a problem that it was urinating in its stall all the time. And the stall was just a boggy mess, and it stunk. And everybody was kind of upset. The other horses, I think, were upset. And so we found that horse had a trapped emotion that was imbalancing its kidneys. And when we released that trapped emotion, all of a sudden, the problem was gone, and the stall dried up and everybody was happy again. It's really interesting, right? We've seen lots of trapped emotions in animals, horses, dogs, cats. I mean, even chickens. There's a YouTube video called "Bullying Chicken Solution." At least it used to be there. I think it still is. Where this woman named Michelle Tennant, she was a runner, and she couldn't run because she ended up having a lot of back pain. And so she found an emotion code practitioner that was able to work on her at a distance and get rid of her back pain. And so then years later, about 4 years later, she and her husband are trying to raise chickens and get the eggs from the chickens and so on, and trying to live kind of a natural sort of lifestyle. And one of the chickens is a bully and chases all the other chickens around and pecks at them till they bleed. And it's just kind of terrifying all the other chickens. And so she looked it up online. What do you do if a chicken is a bully? And online it said, you eat that chicken. But she didn't want to eat the chicken because it was a really good egg layer. So she calls this practitioner and says, listen, I got this chicken that has this problem. Can you work on the chicken remotely? And he said, well, I don't know. Chickens have trapped emotions, but he did. He gave it the old college try. And what he found was that this chicken had a trapped emotion of being unsupported. And he released that trapped emotion. And if you go online, you can see this video, and it's this woman, Michelle, walking around with a camcorder in her backyard saying, look at this is unbelievable. The chicken just instantly changed. So you have to open your mind to the possibility that animals are intelligent, that they experience emotions. I mean, you think about all the abuse that animals have experienced over all these generations, animals just being looked at as nothing but machines to be abused. And we're, again, our consciousness is expanding now, and we're realizing, no, animals are amazing. In fact, I'll tell you something. This is probably going to make me sound completely crazy. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but I had a really interesting experience recently. We've been living with our son, or he's been living with us actually, and he has a dog, a wonderful dog that we really love. So one day, I was eating something at the counter, and I was giving the dog some, sharing with the dog a little bit, and then I put what I was eating back in the fridge, came back over to the counter, and the dog was sitting there looking at me, and the dog made this sound, and as the dog made that sound, in my mind, as clear as a bell, I heard the words, want more. So the dog was like communicating me. I'll never forget that as long as I live. It was really amazing. So of course I gave the dog more. And I've talked to other people that have had that kind of experience, but that was a new one for me. Really cool.
I mean, one of the things that certainly I've seen a lot in recent years is cancer amongst pets as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the world is so toxic now that there's all kinds of reasons. But I mean, one of the beautiful things about the emotion code, of course, and the body code as well, is that they work with animals just like people. I mean, we may eventually come out with a body code just for animals. We've talked about that before, but you can certainly use the body code right now and the emotion code to address issues that are going on with your animals. And again, just like with people, 80% of their issues are going to be just from trapped emotions. So you can have great results just with the emotion code.
Yeah. Awesome. And what's next for you, Brad?
Well, let's see. We've got a live body code seminar coming up. It's a certification event coming up on the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, I believe, of this month in Las Vegas. We have some seats left for that. So anybody that wants to come to that, you have to be emotion code certified to attend, but then you can be body code certified in 3 days. So that may be worth the trip for you. Well, we'll be over in Europe again this summer. We'll be doing an event in London, actually. Yeah. And let's see. Where are you, Lee, in the world?
So I'm just north of London.
Oh, yeah, just north of London. Well, let me take a look and I can tell you the date on that. I believe that's going to be on the 8th and 9th of June in London. So yeah, we're excited about that. And then we're going to be doing a seminar in Frankfurt, Germany, body code seminar. That's going to be 13th, 14th, and 15th of June. And then I think I'm going to be speaking at the Great Ore Festival in Cologne, Germany, the following weekend, 21st, 22nd of June. And we'll be in Romania teaching Emotion Code, Body Code. That's going to be in July 5th and 6th and 7th. We'll be in Italy, in Milan on July 12th and 13th. And let's see here. Yeah, it looks like that's it for the summer so far on my schedule. But I'm also going to be at Art of Living. Now, doing an Emotion Code seminar. And the Art of Living event is going to be April 26, 27, and 28. And that's going to be, the Art of Living is in Boone, North Carolina, in one of the most beautiful places in the world, in the Blue Ridge Mountains, just an amazing place. And this center, the Art of Living Center, they have these centers all over the world. They're kind of a yoga meditation, kind of a retreat center. And they have great, vegetarian food. They've got massage, all kinds of things that they have to offer, including, hikes and free Wi-Fi, you name it. So if you're interested, you can come to discoverhealing.com, our website, check that out. And that's
and your social media, just so the listeners know where to find you.
Yes, of course, we're on Facebook. Our company name is Discover Healing. So we have a site for, we're on there. We're on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. And then, of course, there's Dr. Bradley Nelson on those as well. And so I try to post on those. And And so I also have a personal blog at drbradleynelson.com. That's drbradleynelson.com. And that's my personal site. But our main page is discoverhealing.com.
Awesome. Great stuff. Dr. Brad, thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed chatting with you for the last hour or so.
Yeah, it's been really fun to talk with you, Lee. Thanks so much. And I look forward to meeting you. Maybe we'll connect up in London.
Yeah, that would be great. Awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely. So that's all from Dr. Brad and me for this week. But don't forget, you can join me same time, same place next week on the Radical Health Rebel podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Remember to give the show a rating and a review, and I'll see you next time.